The Assange extradition case has been kicked further down the road. The appeals court at the High Court here in London adjourned its due decision on Tuesday. It has sought 3 assurances from the US government before the case could proceed further. The first of these is an assurance from the US that Assange would have the right and the claim in the US to a defense under the First Amendment of the US Constitution. That, of course, is the amendment that guarantees free speech. The second is that he will not be discriminated against on grounds that he is an Australian national. And third, that the death penalty would not apply. On the third, assurances have been given by the US already. That is not a matter that really is material to the debate and the dispute here. On the second, again, assurances are very likely from the US that he will not be discriminated against because he is an Australian. It is the first of those issues on the First Amendment that is the tricky one that really goes to the heart of the case. Whether this was an exercise of free speech as a journalist and as a citizen, or whether he, as the US government alleges, compromised US security and US security personnel and personnel of its allies through the leaks, particularly those leaks that related to defense matters. It is over these 3 that the US government is now due to give a response over the next 3 weeks. The next hearing has been set for May the 20th. If the US does not give these guarantees, then the case would be sent to a court of appeal for a full hearing before a further appeals court that will then take a call, and it is likely that that decision could support Assange, because the argument clearly would be that the assurances sought have not come in. But if the assurances do come in, and this is before the next hearing in the case, then the case still will be heard. Assange's argument still will be heard at the next hearing, and the court will then take a call whether to order extradition or not. And if it does order extradition, the appeal that Assange can further invoke would be to the European Court of Human Rights, which is not very likely to grant such an appeal, going by its past practices and going by its past judgments. So short wait ahead now over a decision on Assange. After a very long wait, he has been in prison now, well, for the last more than 5 years, but really in detention, in virtual prison, or in effect in prison for much longer. He was holed up at the Ecuador embassy for more than 7 years. He had sought a refuge there and political asylum there to ward off a demand from Sweden for his extradition in a rape case. That case was later dropped on the grounds that it had run out of time. On his exit from the Ecuador embassy in April 2019, he was arrested and sent to Belmarsh prison on grounds of breaking bail conditions, and since then this matter has proceeded in the courts here. In January of 2021, a court blocked his extradition. It upheld that the US government has a fair case against him. It upheld that case on merit, so to speak, but blocked extradition on the grounds that his move to the US would present an oppressive risk that he might commit suicide. That decision was reversed a year later, and extradition was ordered after guarantees from the US about his safety. Now the court has demanded yet more guarantees from the US. But while this proceeds in court, a parallel track has been activated to come to some sort of negotiated settlement that perhaps he could be sent to Australia to serve time there. That is still being negotiated. The delay here does buy time for those negotiations. So there are really 2 tracks to watch out for. First, the case here, the legal track. Second, whether a settlement can be reached. And these are the 2 tracks on which a decision is likely. Which comes first, what that decision is, we should now know fairly soon.
Today's decision is astounding. The courts recognize that Julian is exposed to a flagrant denial of his freedom of expression rights that he is being discriminated against on the basis of his nationality, an Australian, and that he remains exposed to the death penalty. And yet, what the courts have done have been to invite a political intervention from the United States, to send a letter saying it's all okay. I find this astounding. 5 years into this case, the United States has managed to show the court that their case remains an attack on press freedom, an attack on Julian's life. What the courts haven't agreed to look at is the evidence that the United States has plotted to assassinate Julian, to kidnap him. Because if it acknowledges that, then of course he can't be sent to the United States. Julian is a political prisoner. He is a journalist, and he is being persecuted because he exposed the true cost of war in human lives. This case is a retribution. It is a signal to all of you that if you expose the interests that are driving war, they will come after you. They will put you in prison and they will try to kill you. Julian is just a few days away from the 5th anniversary of his arrest and imprisonment in Belmarsh prison. He has been in Belmarsh for 5 years without conviction, and the charges against him are to punish him for publishing the truth, for publishing evidence of the war crimes committed by the country that is trying to extradite him. Now, the UK courts have invited the United States to issue assurances. The Biden administration should not issue assurances. They should drop this shameful case that should never have been brought. Julian should never have been imprisoned for a single day. This is a shame on every democracy. Julian is a political prisoner. He is a publisher, and he is being published for expressing his political opinion, for expressing freedom of the press in its purest form. Free Julian. I ask everyone to rally behind him and call for his freedom, call for the Biden administration to drop the case and support House Resolution 934 before the U.S. Congress to drop this case. Thank you.